I always actually like starting just spending a few moments talking about kind of mentors or people that have been influential in your journey. You have worked at a number of places and now you've been running this company for a while. But does anyone come to mind outside of family in terms of mentors that have been influential in how you think about the world, how you think about business, how you think about leadership?
Yeah, so one of the beauties of the world today is I have a significant number of mentors that I've worked directly with, but also there's an expansive literature of people who you can borrow from who have written about their experiences. And so I'm always inspired, and I'm a voracious reader, so I'm always inspired about reading about entrepreneurs in the of past days and learning from their experiences, learning from their mistakes. And one of the Izzy Sharp, who founded Four Seasons, wrote Four Seasons, is somebody that is inspiring. But same with books by Conrad Hilton and others in the industry. I've been fortunate enough to spend time with Chip Conley more directly, as well as Danny Meyer, both of whom have a really strong perspective on what it means to deliver high quality hospitality. And in particular, Chip Conley helped our company create one of our core values, which is to be Hall of Fame hosts. He sort of was like, you're not just hosts. You're not just delivering hospitality in hotels and apartments. You want your jersey to be retired in the Hall of Fame of hosts, and that's a value that is one of four values for the company. And Danny Meyer, he joined our all hands. Everyone gets at Kasa when they join a few things. One of them is the book Setting the Table, which I think is a must read for anyone in hospitality, whether it's F&B or hotel branding and operations or beyond. And he came in our all hands and he said, what you're doing is delivering technology to hotels and removing a lot of the non-hospitality elements that in automating those. But you're not, high tech does not mean low service. It actually can mean high service. And it should mean high service. And that's a credo that we have really taken to heart. High tech is not low service. High tech is high service. And he shared how that was the case and is the case for Shake Shack, and how it's the case in many other contexts. But it's certainly something that we hold really as an important concept that we're constantly building behind. There are folks that I've worked directly with at KKR, at Walton Street Capital. I really learned a lot from Ralph Rosenberg and Billy Butcher and Chris Lee and many others at KKR, and the same at Walton Street. I'm fortunate to be working with a mentor from Walton Street at Kasa, and so many folks who are both direct mentors and also folks who I've just been able to voraciously read about.
It seems like you're a voracious learner and very curious because you're pulling from the best of classic hospitality and the best of real estate, looking for innovation. And I think it's interesting talking with you, observing you from a distance, having the pleasure to kind of meet you at a few different industry conferences. And you're building a very cutting edge product, but you're pulling from a legacy of great hospitality. And I wonder if you could expand just a moment on this notion of Hall of Fame hosts. What does that mean to be a Hall of Fame host to you as you've been building this business?
Yeah, so at the very basic level, a good host needs to get the essentials right. Chip Conley often talks about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in hospitality. At the lowest level, it's making sure that a human can eat, has all their basic needs covered. In hospitality, that the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is sort of make sure the room is clean, the Wi-Fi works, the check-in is easy, that we deliver 24/7 concierge-like customer service, that all the supplies are there, etc. All the basics are covered. That is non-trivial to do on a 24/7 basis across. Casa operates in 85 properties and in an evolved way relative to traditional hospitality operators. We have a lot fewer staff. So our first focus was make sure the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are delivered on. To be a Hall of Fame host, you need to do that, and then make sure you deliver on a feeling to the guest of care, of feeling of a feeling that makes them feel seen and recognized as guests, as special guests in your property. That can be done across property, in an individual property, and it's especially difficult to do when you don't have a staff member greeting the guest directly. The way we do that is we build a relationship with a guest in digital channels where we get to know them over time. So we kind of have a sense if you previously asked for extra pillows because the pillows caused your neck to hurt, next time you stay, we will proactively make sure it's in your profile automatically. We'll proactively ensure that we deliver on extra pillows. If you asked for, where's the nearest coffee shop, and we asked you how it went via text, and you said, "I really like this form of coffee," it's in your room next time that you're staying with us. And we can do that not just at the same property that you're at, but because it's a digital one profile that we have across the country for you. We'll do that next time you stay at this hotel, which is the Hotel Castro. We'll similarly do it if you're staying with us in the Style in downtown LA, or in the Lantern in New York City, or in any property across the US. And so it's building that connection, that relationship with the guest. That's what it means to be a Hall of Fame host.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned being high tech and high touch. So you've intentionally built this company, this brand, to be staff light, but still provide this level of service. And it's a strong point of view, right? It's not necessarily going to work for everybody in every situation. I wonder if you could tell me a little bit more about the problem or the opportunity that you saw when you're in the early stages of imagining this company. You work at KKR, you're at Juniper Square for a little while. What did you see out there in the market? What were you observing that led you to found Kasa?
Yeah, and just to be clear, by being staff light, it means we are delivering a very different service. Mm-hmm. But the feeling that we want to impart on someone is it's hospitality that's rarely seen but always felt. You always feel us in the property, but you don't necessarily see us. And some travelers, independent travelers, folks who value privacy, really prefer that. Others would not like that, and I think having that point of view ensures that we are attracting a growing segment of consumer and guests who prefers the self-directed, digitally enabled experience. So to answer your question on what inspired Kasa, at KKR, we invested in traditional hotels, we invested in apartment buildings. I was increasingly noticing a consumer problem and a owner problem. On the consumer side, it felt like the hotels we were investing in, traditional CBD, big box, full service hotels, were dissonant relative to the hotels that I was excited to stay in, or the type of hospitality that my friends and folks of my generation, also a little bit the generation before me, and certainly the generation after me that values experiences over things. Those hotels were quite dissonant relative to what consumers wanted, and that dissonance was being embodied in a cry for help that I think Airbnb reflected. Like, Airbnb was an imperfect solution to a type of hospitality that a lot of consumers really wanted. Imperfect because you weren't sure what you were going to get. The reliability factor of having an individual host who isn't a professional purveyor of hospitality is unsatisfactory for many trip types. Like for a business trip, for a family trip, you just have to have it work. But that the need for a different type of experience is so strong that despite the imperfection, Airbnb grew extraordinarily quickly. So that was
in spite of itself.
In spite of itself. And I love Airbnb. Yeah. It's a partner for Kasa. We distribute we look at it as an OTA. And so we distribute in 46 channels. Airbnb is an important channel among those. But it can't, without a professional host, it can't deliver on that reliable experience. That was the consumer problem that we saw. Because we were owners ourselves at KKR, we were really attuned to the difficulty and increasing secular kind of difficulty of operating and owning hotels. I mean, we obviously were intimately familiar with every single line item in a hotel P&L, and almost to the line item, the costs were increasing at a faster clip than the revenues were increasing. Whether it's more fixed costs like taxes and insurance, or labor costs because of a labor supply issue that is going to continue for the foreseeable future, or in more recent times, debt service. Every line item was growing on the cost side faster than the revenue side, and so you had this.
And this was pre-pandemic.
This is pre-pandemic. It
Right.
has gotten worse. So
Yeah.
I started the business in August 2016. This was already an issue. Labor costs were already becoming a real burden for owners. Insurance, taxes, all of those were already difficult. You just, amped that problem up, 10x, using more artful language, not precisely 10x, but amped it up significantly in the pandemic. And so, so that was the owner problem that we were looking to solve.
Well, and that, as you touched on, that problem, it seems like has only increased over time. You go to every investment conference, people are talking about costs increasing, whether it's labor or they're talking about other aspects of the business just not being as attractive as it once was. You've built Kasa into a company that's growing very quickly. It seems like it has achieved that product market fit on a consumer side, but on an owner side as well. And I wonder if we could talk about some of the differences of this. Before we started recording, you were showing me an app. You had built a property management system in-house where this is a proprietary technology, and you were able to run your whole business just off your phone. And then we met one of your team members here who could do the same thing. And so I guess my question for you is, when it came, there's so many moving parts to running a business like this. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the technology aspect of it. How did you think about technology from the earliest days, and what led to the decision to build your own technology to run this?
Yeah, so at the highest level, what we do, who we are, we're a manager for owners of properties, whether they be hotel style properties, boutique hotels, ranging from this room, this property. We have properties smaller than this, but this property is 12 rooms. We have properties as small as 6 rooms, all the way up to 250 plus room properties. We're a property manager. We're hired to deliver income to the bottom line to the owner, and so and obviously maximize that for the owner, and we deliver a great experience to the guest with the ultimate objective of delivering through that great experience great RevPAR, good RevPAR index, in strong flow through to the owner. The question then is what tools are at our disposal to maximize that bottom line for the owner, to increase margin, to deliver better and better RevPAR, etc. There are many tools at our disposal.
Well, if I could just jump in there, just because I appreciate that context, and what you touched on earlier is an integral part of that, right? Because there's a lot of tools. I heard a lot of design thinking around how do you deliver an outcome that guests love and is profitable, right? So it's not that you're trying to invent a tech startup. It seems that is a tool supporting this goal of being high tech and high touch, and solving both a consumer and an owner problem.
Yeah, and I think often technology is an end of itself. Like, we were building technology just to build technology because that is what we are supposed to do, and we're just gonna. And for us, technology was a way to solve a problem for guests, for owners alike, and it was one of the ways. We have technology on its own, when not paired with the right operating approach, won't succeed. And so technology for us is paired with our operations. And understanding, a really deep understanding of what guests like and what guests don't like in order to deliver that stay. An example, you would think for a technology company, we would have the default would be that guests use us through an app, right? We actually made an intentional choice to not build and require a downloadable app for the guest.
Why?
And also, how could a technology company not have an app? And every other company in our sector, the first thing they touted was like, we're the, look at our app, like it's like really.
Especially a couple years ago when you were starting, right? This is everybody.
We were like, I was sort of embarrassed, but in a way that I was also proud of, if that makes sense. Like, I was embarrassed because of course you have an app, like that's the obvious. But when you talk to guests and you ask them, do you want, when you book a stay with a property for the first time, to be required to download an app for that property, you will hear a resounding, like, to access the property, no. Like, that is a bug, not a feature. That is friction for me as a guest. And obviously, building an app, you have to support iOS and you have to support Android, and there's a lot of other things we could build. And so it is expensive to build an app, it's expensive to maintain an app, and when you do it, the guest hates it, at least on their first stay. After they're staying with you and their second stay, and maybe their third. But once they're staying with you, on their 10th stay, on their 20th stay, they want that more seamless experience. What instead we did is we built a web app. which is it feels like an app, but you access it through Safari or Chrome or your phone browser in order to. And we chose text to be the medium of communication that is most prominent because that's the natural communication for a guest with a friend, with a host. And so we thought that would be very familiar with guests. And again, that was through conversations with guests, through testing, through testing quickly a few different approaches. And so upon booking, you will be texted a pre-arrival checklist which is a web app in which you upload your ID and your selfie, and it sidesteps the requirement for a front desk. And on the day of arrival, you'll be texted your arrival instructions, which include your codes, and includes the Wi-Fi, and you can text. It's the same number that you text us back on versus that we text you from, which is a subtle point. But if you think about how you interact with, maybe I'm picking on them because I just flew United. They texted me from a random 4-digit number. I called some 800 number, a different 800 number called me when I was on the phone with them. I was texting them, but the person on the phone didn't know that I was texting them. That is not how you build a relationship with a person. Why are you texting to a different number than they're texting you from? By the way, Hilton has different numbers for every property, but it's one. It's one. It should be one organism. And so for us, we have one phone number. It's 650-451-3444 across every single property that we text you from. You text us to that same number. Automated messages go from that number. You call that number. We call you from that number. It's a real phone number. If you save it as you would save a friend's number. And what that allows us to do is build a relationship with the guest over time as they travel to different locations, a familiarity with how we approach hospitality as well. And if you call us, the way that it works on the back end and you're texting us, it's all in one timeline. The history of every communication that you've ever had with Kasa is in one simple to look at timeline. And it allows us to build more and more context, create more cohesiveness, and give you this magical feeling, which should be the way that you experience every brand, that over time you're like building a relationship with a host, hopefully a Hall of Fame host.
Yeah. As we're sitting here and recording in 2024, artificial intelligence is hot. Everyone's been talking about it for a year or so, even though it's existed, of course, for years before this. But the public consciousness around AI is hot.
Yes.
On every level. And so I'm curious, how have you, over the past year, taken this mentality of listen to guests, what do they want, and to your staff and other stakeholders, and then thought about approaching artificial intelligence and your use of that in this business?
It's almost as if our business was built to harness the power of artificial intelligence with the idea that artificial intelligence would one day be a source of a real opportunity. But we sort of like lucked into it. I couldn't have predicted that there would be a GPT moment in the last year where all of a sudden people realized how powerful large language models, which had been developed for quite for 5 years prior at least, how powerful they could be. And so a lot of what we built is like purpose built to harness it, but unintentionally. And because of that, we are actively doing some really exciting things, always with the objective function of how do we deliver more profitability while delivering a better and better guest experience. So profitability to the owner, better and better guest experience to the guest. With the most obvious AI, and when I say AI, I'm specifically right now referring to large language models, although that is a wider and more expansive kind of domain. The most obvious is to reduce the cost of the operation through automating certain things. That's again, it's always like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This that's the first step. So over the last year, we've been working with OpenAI through their large language model and integrating that into our communication flow. And the first, we did it through a few stages. One, the large language models would categorize every question that a guest messaged us about. So if you text us about check-in, it would auto-assign a category that this is a check-in question. If you texted us about luggage storage, it would assign luggage storage as a category. Simple. Why that's important is it allows us to monitor across the country which categories create the most issues, prioritize our roadmap on the categories that are the most costly because they create the most questions. That's at the kind of national level, which allows us to almost like line by line get more and more efficient because, oh, like what's the next thing we work on? Well, it's this category that represents 30% of our costs, whatever category it might be. At a local level, the teams can see, oh, we're constantly in this property getting questions about the HVAC system. They might know that anyways, but this just shows in data how valuable solving that problem at the root cause will be. So first we categorized. The second thing we did is put an urgency score to the questions. So certain questions, if you text us about, can be answered over 5 minutes and it's not a problem. Like where's the nearest coffee shop? Other questions, every second feels like 5 minutes. I'm locked out of the room and I need to get into the unit.
And I imagine, was there a certain amount of judgment that was required in that, where you have to, again, think with this sort of Hall of Fame host mentality?
And we're getting thousands of questions, right? So it's almost like you have to have a really good process in order to identify which ones are urgent, which ones are not urgent, and it's very hard to do that definition by hand. And our average response time is sub 3 minutes. On chat, it's sub 1 minute. But that means certain questions might be 5 minutes, certain questions might be 1 minute. We want to make sure that the question on lockouts is 30 seconds every time or 20 seconds every, very, very fast response. And so the AI recognizes the urgency level with extraordinary accuracy, and it puts it at the highest of the queue. So all of a sudden you text an urgent question and you get an extremely fast response from us. So that's stage 2. It's the prioritization. The really exciting part is stage 3, which is Copilot. We call Copilot. So Copilot is where we provide all the context of a guest reservation and the communications with us, as well as context about our property. And the large language model, to your question, recommends an answer to our team, and our team press send. Literally, like it appears, and they could press send, or they can change it a bit.
Why do that 2-step versus just auto responding?
The reason we did the 2-step is it allows us to learn where the large language model is delivering good response versus not so great response. We have an advantage. So why I said we're purpose built for artificial intelligence, where if you take like a traditional hotel run by Aimbridge or branded by Marriott, they're not, is because all of our communications are digital. So you need 2 prerequisites. You need the data about the property. So let's say, Josiah, you're staying here, you have a problem with the thermostat. You text Kasa, how does the thermostat work? For the AI to answer the question, it needs to know what the model number of the thermostat is. It needs to be able to look up the instruction manual of the thermostat. And it also needs to actually capture your conversation. So you need to have structured data where otherwise it's unstructured data. Unstructured data is just like there's a TV in the room. Right. Structured data is the TV is a Sony TV with this model number, and so it needs structured data. And I'm not picking on Aimbridge or Benchmark or Pyramid or all these. They're good management companies, but they're not set up to structure the data in their properties because they don't need to, and they would be a kind of a waste of their time. The other thing you need is a digital flow, right? If your default way of talking to your guest is going to the front desk, that's an analog flow. It's a nice flow for many forms of hospitality, but AI cannot fit into that flow. You need to first digitize it, then you need the actual structured data. And it's structured data about what's in the unit, it's structured data about you as a guest, like every conversation that you had, etc. So those are 2, if you don't have those from the start, those are like it's very difficult to bring your conversations with a guest from analog to digital as a operator and brand. It's also really time consuming to go through every unit and like digitize all of the information. You literally have to go through, for Marriott, 1.5 million rooms and digitize all the information in the room. So it's a very difficult thing to do. We've done it from the start. And so to answer your question on why not go direct to guests is we can't answer every question. The large language model, maybe there's a huge set of questions that we were able to answer, but some that we can't, and we cannot feel to the guest like we are insufficiently delivering a response. That wouldn't be a Hall of Fame host kind of experience. What we have done though is through Copilot, we have seen, hey, 50. So these are actual stats. A little over 50%, and it's been growing, of guest questions are answered with the Copilot recommended response without any change.
50%, over 50%.
Over 50%.
Wow.
And then another 17 or so percent are answered with minor changes. And about a third require a significant reworking of the recommended response. That's not good enough to go direct to guests because you don't know which 50% are good, right? So that's where the categorization is really important. What we looked at then is, okay, are there certain categories where the system is delivering a better response than not? So we found like amenity questions, for example. What time is the gym open until? How do I access the amenities? What amenities exist on site? We were at like a 98% success rate. And it maybe started at 90% and we tweaked it by category, specifically amenity category in this case, and increased to 98%.
98% is a lot.
It's a lot. So we go direct to guest on amenities. If you text Kasa about the time a gym is open, the first response will be an automated response. You won't feel automated to you. It will feel like any other response that it's like, I've seen some like amazing messages that a large language model recommended, but that will bypass the human. It'll go straight to the guest. However, if you follow up with another question that then is beyond the purview of the large language model based on the category, or even within category, it knows that certain things it can't handle, it then escalates to the guest experience team who will answer your question by hand. And so over time, more and more categories are going direct to guests. And we're looking within category and seeing, hey, this one's at 80%. What are the 20% that it's missing? Why? And then it's maybe a data problem. It doesn't have enough information, so we add in the data. Maybe it's a context problem. Maybe it's a form of response problem. And so we've been going through, and systematically, and this is hard work that our team is doing, but systematically improving each category to deliver a better and better rate. And so I'm sharing data that, at 67%. It used to be 40%, not 67, as an example of kind of the improvement that we've seen in just the short set of months. And I get excited about this, so I'm probably being very long-winded, but that's the defense. That's kind of like automation, lower cost, deliver better, faster responses. This obviously lowers costs for the owner because a large set of responses happen at a much lower cost in an automatic way. It also delivers a better experience to the guests because you're getting responses within seconds on certain categories. The proactive hospitality that we're going to be increasingly delivering is kind of where this gets really exciting, where over time we're using all the digitized communications you had with us. The large language model is summarizing and saying, hey, Josiah really liked has these preferences based on previous communications, and puts it and puts in our ops team's kind of workflow ways to really delight you behind the scenes when you stay with us. And it's just like a lot of processing that's happening really quickly and allowing us to be hospitality that's rarely felt but always seen. Rarely seen but always felt.
I love that. Well, I mean, this is hearing you describe this is the best of sort of proprietor-led hospitality in the sense of there's a person. I mean, we're sitting here in San Francisco at your Castro property, met Marcus, but very seamless check-in process here. Hit the code in the elevator on the way up. There's this note from Marcus, right? And then Marcus turned out to be, spending some time up on the roof doing some work and able to run the business, just from the rooftop there, enjoying this beautiful day. But it seems like this combination of there is a person, there's a point of contact, but Marcus is also supported by all this infrastructure. And I imagine allows him to spend more time doing what only Marcus can do, right? And taking all the other work off his plate.
100%. Marcus doesn't have to be stationary behind a front desk. He can be focused on, hey, this is a 12-room hotel. We also complex folks across the city to make sure that properties are effectively sharing resources. But how can I make every single guest stay special while also making sure that anything that comes up is handled? And so the results, a 12-room hotel in San Francisco, I would guess most operators and owners are like, that property loses money at GOP like how can you run a 12-room property? San Francisco has really stiff regulation, really high labor costs. 12-room properties don't have enough scale to create economies of scale in terms of the operation. We are running this property at a 60 plus percent, I think it's 63% trailing 12 gross operating profit margin. That's not just like, I mean, I almost hesitate to share those stats sometimes because they sound so high, I would guess, to a typical operator that they almost lose some, like, almost rather it be like lower so that it sounded more credible. Like our New York City property is at a 67, 68% trailing 12 GOP margin. And so it allows Marcus to not have to sit behind one desk. It allows the property owner to, and so he can focus on delivering high quality Hall of Fame hospitality. It allows the owner to generate more margin. It allows the guest to have a self-directed, independent guest experience. We have a lot we can improve, obviously, but it's exciting to see those pieces come together.
And what's some of the impact on the neighborhood as a whole? So great for owners, great for guests, great for team members. Does this model tend to get people out into more neighborhoods and exploring more of a city like San Francisco?
Yeah, that's what you know. In many properties, your amenity is the neighborhood that you're in. That's honestly one of the advantages of Airbnb. Airbnb is available in neighborhoods that previously didn't have great hospitality options, and the Castro is one of those. This is the only professionally run hotel in the Castro. The Castro is a vibrant neighborhood that obviously has great retail and like lively bars, and like it's just like, and it's such a special place. Folks who are staying at this property are more likely to have the neighborhood be their amenity. In Kasa's mission statement, we have our mission statement is to build the global hospitality brand of choice that is indispensable to property owners, beloved by guests, and desired by neighbors. And so neighbors are a really important component of the experience, and it allows us to open up in kind of hotel deserts within neighborhoods that I think need a really high quality and special place to stay, to have hospitality offerings.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I live a few blocks away on the other side of Market Street, and whenever I have friends coming into the city, I was like, I love our neighborhood. There's no hotels here. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. And so, I'm going to be sending people over this way to stay here, because I love that, and just kind of spreading people outside of the downtown cores, which there's a time and a place for that type of offering. But I mean, this is the beauty of San Francisco to me. It's like what we're seeing here outside.
100%. Yeah. And like, you stay here, you check in, it's a seamless check-in, you get what you need from from Marcus, you grab a drink at the lobby bar, and then you're off to explore the neighborhood and the city.
So let's talk a little bit more about cost cutting, because every investment conference, you talk to any owner or operator, everyone's talking about cost getting out of hand, right? We've talked a little bit about technology, the brand, and how you've architected the guest experience, the overall offering that you have. What else comes to mind as you think about cost cutting and how you've built a competitive, differentiated advantage as it relates to reducing costs of operating a property?
Yeah, and I was at multiple conferences. I heard like a few different themes that came up over and over again, where we're at the kind of intersection of helping to solve. So we're sort of like the demand and RevPAR of lifestyle hotels combined with the margin of extended stay hotels. And those are two kind of things that usually are disparately talked about, and we sort of unite them. And the margin of extended stay hotels comes from the fact that we are really dramatically lowering the cost of operations. That's most valuable to owners in cities which have difficult regulatory environments and higher costs across labor, across taxes, across insurance. I'm thinking of Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, Santa Barbara, yeah. Miami, like New York.
All beautiful cities.
Great cities.
But really hard to operate in.
Yeah, it's like running a hotel in these cities is like training in the hardest gyms in the world. It's really, really difficult. And so what we have done is especially applicable to owners in these cities. One of the reasons it's valuable is we reduce fixed costs. So if revenue is really down in Portland or in LA, we're still generating margin because there's not as much fixed costs at the property where no matter what, you need a accounting team at the property or a revenue management team or a housekeeping supervisory team or people staying idly at the front desk. Your fixed costs are much lower, and then your overall costs are much lower. The way that we cut costs for owners is by we essentially went through, this is to your technology question, we went through every line of the P&L and we asked ourselves, what can we do to improve it? And there were really three main motions that we chose. We either centralized a cost, we removed the cost, or we automated the cost. And again, technology is one of the tools to help reduce costs, but there are other tools as well. So we for example, clean once a stay, not once a night. We have really significant data on this and find that guests do not penalize us on reviews. Our properties, this property is the number 3 ranked property on TripAdvisor in San Francisco. We have the number 1 ranked hotel on TripAdvisor in Chicago, in Denver, top 3 in a number of other cities, Austin. I get really excited about this. So whenever I speak about
it. It's exciting. I used to work in guest satisfaction management, and you would not, you would believe actually the amount of effort and cost that goes into earning these positive reviews for good reason, because it affects demand, it affects so much of likeliness to return, all this good stuff.
For sure.
Right, and so it is a huge driver of demand. But being able to do this in a way that actually is cutting costs is the holy grail.
Totally. And how did we get to such a light service model but great experience, guest reviews? Well, it goes back to the categorization of every part of your stay. We got a bad review in one location. We know the categories that those people reference, the reason that they reached out, if there were any issues. We have that data across every property, across every stay, and we systematically basically address issues across the portfolio that have caused what you might call defects in an assembly line, and we remove defects one by one until you're delivering a really pristine stay, and then you go above and beyond relative to expectations in terms of proactive hospitality. And so that's what leads to that's among the things that leads to those really great reviews. Obviously, a resonant approach to delivering hospitality that resonates with a growing set of consumers who want a digitally native approach. But going back to the cost question, so we eliminated centralized or automated line items. Eliminated is nightly cleaning. Eliminated is the front desk. Centralized is revenue management. As an example, it's accounting and finance. It's corporate sales. And automating is also accounting and finance. Certain things that you can just do, and obviously some of the customer service elements that I was mentioning. You can go. Each line had one of those approaches, and sometimes that approach is with technology automating accounting. Some of that is operations. So not doing nightly cleanings is not a technology-driven approach, although how we do cleanings is really deeply infused with technology. So we don't have housekeeper supervisors. Our housekeepers have a system, an app so there is an app for housekeepers, though the app for guests is not one they have to download. And the app for housekeepers has them going through a checklist and taking photographs before and after the cleans. There are a lot of things, details. The app is in Spanish as well as in English, in one of our markets in Polish as well.
And you made this app for yourself?
We actually integrate deeply with a third party on that, but it needs to seamlessly work with our property management system that we built ourselves. And so that app is a third party system that goes really hand in glove with our operations.
Well, it's interesting, the thought, it sounds something so specific, but if you kind of break down these costs, housekeeping is not only a huge cost center, but it's also a huge challenge. I'm hearing from staffing, from kind of quality control, all those kind of things. And so again, here you're taking a design first approach, using technology to support people. Was there anything else related to the housekeeping part of the business that you did differently to ensure you're delivering these results?
Yeah, so we have we have really no housekeeping supervisors. We do some QA by hand, but we also the photos that are taken, which we switch up depending on the property and the time. We we'll QA offsite as well. So we'll look at the photos and make sure they're up to standards. The way I think about housekeeping and the way that we've delivered it with technology paired with operations is almost analogous to if Uber were housekeeping like Uber for housekeeping. So there's a scheduling component that we do quite differently. There's an kind of how you get from where you start to your destination that we do differently. The map, that's the checklist, the photos, and then there's a feedback loop after your Uber ride. You're rating your driver, they might be rating you, and so a guest, when they check in, will rate the cleanliness of the room. After their checkout, they'll do the same. That gives us a ability to just after check-in address any issues if the cleanliness wasn't up to snuff. It also allows us to systemically look at which parts of the cleaning will follow up of cleaning wasn't good, where was it, will not to satisfaction. So systemically improve the system of housekeeping over time. And it also assigns a score to every housekeeper that we then can use for incentivizing the great housekeepers who go above and beyond. It's really hard work, housekeeping. I've done it for, you want to do every job a day in the life, and that's one of the hardest jobs to do.
Did you do that? Did you do it kind of these different functional areas?
Yeah, well, over the period of growing the business,
yeah.
I've probably done nearly every job in the company by virtue of necessity. Like we had no one else. At our first, when we just started, we had no house. We were just, the starting the business, we were just finding inventory and hadn't yet found a housekeeping partner. And so I cleaned this was not the best guest experience because I know how hard it is. I mean, we did, later on, I started now that we have teams to do all this, I still try to do shadows. And recently we had a competition who on our ops team can make the bed most quickly and most effectively, and I did not place super well there, but it just
Why do you do that? Why do you have these competitions? I like it. It's I don't hear others doing this.
Culture is an important part of delivering hospitality. I'm a firm believer, and maybe this is counter, conventional wisdom to some degree, but I'm a firm believer that as an executive or a leader, you need to be able to do the job of the people that you're leading or really deeply understand it. You don't need to be the best at that job, but you need to really understand it. Like a manager of engineers should be an engineer, ideally the best engineer, but should be an engineer, and someone who's overseeing housekeeping should know how to clean a room. But also, I think you can look at all the data that I mentioned, but you need to get in the weeds. As a leader, you need to walk the floor of your plant, or in our case, the floor of the hotels, see the team, and stay in the properties, because that gives you the intuition to figure out where in the data to look. So if you're just looking at the data, you might not really know where to actually seek answers. If you're going into the weeds, you will be more likely to do so. So the competition itself, that's more fun and building empathy and with the team, recognizing that it's difficult. But the actual act of going to the properties, going to a launch, that is table stakes for folks who are on our team. If you're behind a desk all the time, and even if you're an amazing number cruncher and very very cogent speaker, if you're not at the properties, you won't be a good fit at Kasa for however long, for forever into the future and into the past.
Well, and you spend a lot of time on the road, and we were talking before you were recording how you're in LA, then now you're here, you're staying at each of these properties. Imagine that also constantly being your own customer makes you aware of things, that maybe gives you some ideas, or hey, let's tweak this. I don't know if anything comes to mind there, but I imagine that's giving you constant feedback as a consumer of your own product.
100%. It's probably a burden and it's a source of pride. It's like going to your kid's music recital or a game. You're proud, but also you're the big, your own biggest critic. So it's a burden that I'm noticing all the small things and moving the lobby around a little bit to make sure that items in the lobby, that the flow for the guests is better. I'm sure I create a little bit of stress for the team. It's out of love and care, and hopefully that is how it comes through. But yeah, a lot of ideas come from those experiences. And an example of one of walking the floor and being in the weeds, but also using data, because those in combination can be really powerful, is how we treat early check-ins, which is also really nicely connects with housekeeping. So I would request early check-in in my stays and would rarely get it approved, which was quite frustrating when staying at Kasa. And one of the reasons for that is it's complicated when you don't have people on site to make sure that the room is fully ready, do the clean on time, etc. We looked in the data and we had 25% acceptance of early check-in. That is, in my view, quite low. This was a year and a half ago or thereabouts. We also looked at when a guest early check-in was approved, what was the review score? And then we looked at what the review score was when their check-in was not approved. And the increase between the two, so if we delivered an early check-in for you, was about a 20% improvement in your review score. That's a dramatic, by the way, 20% doesn't sound that high, but a 4.0 becomes a 4.8, right? You can only go to 5,
yeah,
right? If it's a 4.0 out of 5. So the maximum improvement was 25% in the review score. So these are really dramatic moves in the review score. 40 to 45% of our guests request an early check-in.
Wow,
and we were
almost half.
And
wow.
So we're wow, this is a big category. We're only accepting 25%. So for 75% of guests, we're getting penalized. And for 25%, we're delivering a delightful experience. Can we improve this? And so what we did is we pulled every lever across the guest stay. We changed the way we scheduled cleans to make sure we prioritize ones that have early check-in requests, obviously. We looked at moving guest rooms in order to ensure that the room was available. They were put into a room that maybe didn't have a reservation the night before if they did request early check-in. These are simple things. There were a couple of things that are more major tweaks that are harder for others to do. So after every guest stay, on morning of checkout, we'll text you, hope you had a wonderful stay. Here, this is checkout time. Text us, are you out of the room? Text us, yes. And we were getting a really high percentage response rate at 9:30 a.m. And so all of a sudden that clean can start at 10 a.m. And your window of time to, you need to turn the room, you start the clean instead of at 11 a.m., at 10 a.m., you now can have the room available by noon, where before you were struggling to have it available by noon. Fast forward to today, we're approving 86% of early check-in requests. And obviously we'll never get to 100%. We'll continue to improve and get ever higher. But on 45% of guest stays, we're delivering that significant of an improvement in the feeling of hospitality that they receive, which shines through in reviews, which then to make sure that our property is some of the better ranked and often best ranked properties in cities. And so that kind of connects to everything.
Let's speak to the owners who say, I want to work with you. Okay, what are next steps? I might have it flagged as a hotel now, or maybe it's an apartment building. Where does the relationship start for you?
Yeah, so first, who are the owners? Who's sitting there and reaching out to us? You might be an owner of a 200 and some odd hotel in a major US city, and you're looking at your EBITDA and it's eroding over time. Maybe it's a smaller property and same idea on the hotel side. Or you have an apartment building, maybe it's under development, maybe it was recently delivered, maybe it's stabilized in a city where there's a lot of transient demand, like Nashville or Austin or anywhere kind of in the Sun Belt, and you're looking to improve the occupancy and the revenue of that property. And Kasa in those cases might take a floor or multiple floors or even up to the whole building and run it as furnished rentals. So those are
So you can take just a floor. That seems unique.
Yeah, run it. Yeah, so it would be licensed as a hotel, and that floor would be fully furnished and operated as a really high quality. We just opened one of these in Wynwood, Miami, in the newest property there. It's a beautiful 21 room hotel that is a few floors actually of a larger apartment building. We just signed a deal with Toll Brothers and Prudential in San Diego. So the deal in Wynwood is with Amley Residential, a subsidiary of Morgan Stanley. We're proud to be partnered with Starwood and trusted by some of the large institutions, but we're also really excited to partner with the local owner, and that really brings us tremendous pride, like in the Hotel Castro, where we're really making a difference for folks who have a lot of pride in their product they're delivering. But in San Diego, with Toll Brothers and Prudential, we're taking a few floors, 60 units in a 300 or so unit high rise that is opening in about 7 months. Speaking today in April 2024. So transitions. So those are the situations. You might have an existing operator in the property. We've taken over. We've done a lot of these transitions. We've done, I think, over 25 transitions. They can be tricky. We've heard of horror stories where licenses aren't transferred, reservations aren't transferred correctly. The previous operator had taken stuff from the from the property. If done wrong, the transitions can cost hundreds of thousands, maybe more dollars in lost revenue, in added expenses, etc. We're really practiced at it. And so most recently we took over, or not most recently anymore, but we took over the former Ace Hotel in downtown LA, now called The Style, powered by Kasa. We've also been taking over many properties previously leased by Sonder across different markets. And have kind of a very honed process in terms of what we do, when we do it, in order to effectuate a really smooth handoff from the previous operator. And day -1 the previous operator was operating, day 0 Kasa is operating, and there's quite a bit, but to do that effectively, but we're well practiced in delivering that experience.
Well, there's so many moving pieces there, and I think we talked about so many elements of your operation. I think this is where everything starts, right? That's where the relationship begins with an owner or developer, and thinking about, okay, how do we get started on the right foot, and then start proving value and delivering this guest experience, delivering the profits for the owner. And it all starts from there, right?
100%. And those are really important moments. It's like any transition in life is an important moment. You're going off to college, you're changing jobs. Changing managers is a moment that can go really well. It can go okay. It can go really poorly. We are really proud in the way that we've transitioned these properties and have direct feedback from our owner partners where they're like, we were worried about these 10 things. We'd heard about a bunch of issues, and we've now honed. I think the first transition we did ever was not an amazing transition. The second one was a little bit better. The third one, now we've had 25 or more under our belt, and so that's an important part of what we deliver to our partners.
Well, it's about getting better every day, right? And we started our conversation talking about how you've studied the best of kind of classical hospitality. You're deep in the world of technology, real estate, and I think that's where innovation happens, right? It's both getting the best ideas from everywhere, and also just this mindset of every day, let's try to get a little bit better. And as a leader, pushing your teams to do that.
Yeah, there's a book called The Rational Optimist, which Matt Ridley, I think, wrote. He calls, maybe he borrowed this term, but he says innovation comes from ideas having sex. One idea meets another idea, and a third idea comes to be, and that is what we're doing. We're bringing together the best from technology, the best from hospitality, and borrowing some of the things that are tried and true that have worked for centuries in order to deliver what ultimately is a better experience to guests and owners and neighbors alike.
I love it.
Maybe the last thing is an owner who has this exciting brand that they want on their property. Maybe it's a brand vision that they want 20, 30, 40, 50 of. Maybe it's an individual property's brand. This property, the Hotel Castro, is Whitelabel. So you can feel that it's connected to the Kasa network. It's powered by Kasa as a guest, but it has this sense of identity that's really authentic and true to the owners, what the owner had envisioned, and also what this neighborhood that really feels like really well complementary and kind of like really, it feels like it's aligned with the neighborhood. And that I think many owners will really value. They'll have hey, this property has a specific point of view. I have a specific brand that I want the property to have. And what we have delivered to those folks is a product called Powered By, which is a white labeling of the Kasa experience. The name of the property will be the property that the brand that the owner has envisioned. The design will be will be one that is defined by the owner, but we will handle all the infrastructure, all the operations, and deliver a really cohesive and high quality experience at a really good cost basis. And I think that will speak to quite a few owners, and that really fits well with what we envision for Kasa, where there's the Kasa main brand, and then there's a palette of different ways that it's expressed across different unique properties that exist across the country.
When you think about your new downtown LA property, and it's that, right? Some of these iconic buildings, right? They have kind of a spirit of their own, right? And you're
100%.
able to power them and make that experience happen in a profitable way where everyone's winning.
Yeah, while staying authentic to what I agree. We feel a tremendous amount of responsibility to deliver on a property that really re-energized downtown LA as a neighborhood. And that neighborhood has seen better days today. And we think this is a moment where we can help to, again, have like a rebirth for the neighborhood. That's a lot of responsibility, and it requires a very specific point of view and understanding of sense of place in downtown LA. But that's the opportunity where you can reduce the cost to make the product viable, and then focus on how does the experience come to life in a way that resonates with travelers, with the neighbors of the property, and certainly with the owner.
I love it. Roman, thanks so much for taking time to chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.